Okay guys, welcome. This is the introduction to what we were going to term as Emmet's Blackboard. And to get started, as some of you guys are going to do a few more lectures covering a few topics, but we're going to start with the handstand. Now I'm going to cover what I consider the main points in a handstand. I have my pointing stick here and I have my amazing mannequins drawn here. So I'm going to go through all these points. I'm going to cover all these points in detail in a video, but just to give you an idea of what is the anatomy of a handstand. First we've got to understand what exactly is standing, and then what is standing on our hands. So standing is a position of rest, that we are balanced, our joints and our centre of mass is over our base of support, and we're controlling it. We're making small micro corrections the whole time. If you just stand still and look at a spot for 60 seconds, you'll feel as you breathe in, or as your vision changes, your balance will change. So in a handstand, we're basically trying to replicate this. This is easy. So I can stand here for days, pretty much. Well, not days, but we can stand for days. There's no reason it shouldn't be this easy in a handstand once we've covered a couple of points. Now all we're trying to do in a handstand is basically replicate this position of ease in our hands by basically reconfiguring our hands to act as feet, our wrists to act as ankles, our elbows to act like our knees, and our shoulders to act like our hips. Once this is covered, most of the other force couples and balance relationships in the body are the same, they're just inverted. So, that's a handstand. You guys know this, you watch my videos. So let's just cover some of the main points. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to do videos in detail, so don't worry if I gloss over stuff or some stuff isn't thing. So starting from the feet, or from the hands as you speak, what is called the cambered hand position. So the cambered hand position basically means your middle knuckles are raised off the ground, and you just, basically we've turned our hands into feet. So instead of having our feet when we've got our points of contact, we just call them three for a moment, there's a few more than that. We've got our heels, the ball of our foot and our toes. Same thing in our hands, we're going to have the heel of the hand, the ball of our hand, and then the toes of our hand. Basically that's going to control our thing, rocking around that fixed point of the ball. Basically controls our balance, like I'm doing there. So but doing that, I'm going to cover hands and wrists in detail. Then with wrists, the whole thing about wrists is they need to be prepared for loading. This takes a lot of just building up the things. The more you load them, the more they build, like your ankles basically. That will build up more cartilage, more muscles. Then at the elbow level, for preference here I should state, I teach the hand balancing handstand rather than the gymnastic handstand. There's some subtle differences, but I'll explain them as the series progresses. But in the hand balance handstand, we want a mild bit of hyperextension of the elbows. As you can see that, I don't test height for hyperextension, but I have it in my elbows and I've specifically developed it to make my hand balancing much easier. Then travelling up, just in the ideal position for your handstand, we want to be thinking neutral neck. So what that means is we're just looking at the top of our eyes and our eye line. I'm going to cover this detail. So if you imagine I had, put my pointing stick down. So if I had a line connecting this point to this point, that's my eye line in my handstand. That's where I actually put my timer when I'm doing my handstand. So I can look down, I'm not craning my neck, it's not looking up. Obviously as you progress, you want to be able to move your head around, you want to be able to look up, you want to be able to look at your toes. That's a control issue, but just for the ideal resting handstand for the whole time, that's generally the ideal position. Now we're going to get into shoulders. So in shoulders at the handstand, you hear a lot of things. There's three main techniques in the shoulders. And this basic technique things, we have the Chinese technique, we have Chinese/Mongolian. You see that in their contortions, their hand balancers. Though, bit of insider info, the Chinese have actually poached loads of coaches from the Ukraine and Russia at the moment and have them all as the head hand balance teachers in the Chinese state schools. So there's a little tip, maybe the Russians have the better technique. We'll cover that. So the Chinese position. So basically a lot of people, you'll hear this, protract the shoulder blades, spread the shoulder blades and elevate. That doesn't really apply too much, because if we went, Ukrainian technique is elevate and retract, and then the Chinese Mongolian, as I stated, is have a bit more splay in the chest, a bit more extension to the thing, and not have the line as straight. Different techniques, they all work. The question is which is better. In my mind, we're not looking so much at what the different shoulder position is, because they're quite subtle and don't really matter as long as you just pick and stick one, but more the idea that we are actively resisting into the ground, because that's what's going on in our hips. We're transferring, gravity's pushing, gravity's pulling down, we're pulling up, it keeps the balance. Same thing's happening in the shoulders. We're just resisting that sinking, collapsing. We need to be actively pushing ourselves away. Doesn't matter too much on the shoulder position as long as you know what you're doing. So, next thing we're going to cover is marked here. I'm going to mark down. A lot of these points aren't marked down anyway. But the rib flare. Now, there's an interesting diagnosis for lat tightness that you'll see, that with someone, the lats basically run from down here and attach up onto the arm. Now, if someone's ribs flare out this way, what we have is not so much a core weakness. You can assess this by getting them to do a dish on the ground. If they can achieve a good dish position, the second you put their arms over the head, their ribs flare. We know we have the lats on this side of the body and they're pushing the ribs out, so we need to stretch the lats out. Then next coming down is in the gymnastic. This is one of the main differences between the gymnastic and the hand balance handstand, is, I have marked here as a question mark, the posterior pelvic tilt, that whole lifting, rotating of the pelvis. Now in gymnastics that makes a lot of sense, because you want to be rapidly changing from an arch position to a hollow position. Arch hollow generates a lot of power and tumbling, swinging, all these skills, so obviously you want to align this. But when we're doing hand balancing, a lot of hand balancers who are far better than I've ever been don't hollow. They hold completely in their standing position with the shoulders this thing. Once you've developed your shoulders to that degree, it's like here. I can stand here and I can do anything I want with my hands because my legs are strong enough. Once your upper back and shoulder girdle is developed enough, you can do anything you want with your legs and pelvis to within a degree once you get over your base of support. But I only really coach this at the beginning just to get people used to being tight. Once we move on to that, I find a far superior cure for fixing the cue is to, what I have marked here, is to squeeze the legs together. Now you're going to use the glutes about 20%. The legs are going to be squeezed together. That's for a specific reason, that the adductors, the adductors, are innervated via the deep anterior fascia, which means by the laws of irradiation, if we squeeze them, they'll actually shift the core on for us and lock it in place. That is one of the most important cues I teach in handstands, is squeeze the legs together. Squeeze the glutes mildly, not too tight. Depends on person's basic level of strength. But squeeze that. If you get that right, we're going to have a slight turnout in the legs. When we have mild turnout, that's also quite good because it will also help fix the hips. But that squeezing your legs together, just really get into that, squeeze them, boom. It will fix your core faster than most other things. Then we'll come up to knees. What we're looking for in the knees is full extension. There's a couple of reasons why. Personally I'm a fan of a small bit of hyperextension, just because it gives us a really nice line when we're looking at the handstand. That's not the thing, but we need full extension at the knees by pulling the kneecap up. Once the kneecap's pulled up, that will straighten the other leg out. This will also tie into the cue. The easiest cue for this is to point the feet. By pointing the feet, also not sickling, so we want the feet to be going straight when they bend down, not sickling inwards. And once you do that, that will actually straighten the knees out. We'll squeeze them together and also turn them out just slightly. The reason we want that turn out is just when we start chaining straight, moving from straddle handstand to close, we don't move our straight, like adduct them straight, we adduct and rotate. And having that turn out already will give you an easier time moving in and out. So, I think I have covered all the points I'm looking at. I'm going to do more in detail, but I'm going to do all of these points in detail now. Before I forget, the most important point in your handstand is here. Yes, it's in your head. That we need to develop a certain state of mind for balancing on the spot in such a long time. If you want to ever get past that, there's a trick. You're going to try this. You're going to look at a spot on the wall, you're going to stand straight, and you're going to see if you can do that for 60 seconds, keeping your focus on that spot. If you can't do that, you're going to have a very difficult time just doing that in your handstand. So you must develop that calm, relaxed, focused state of mind rather than excitation. A handstand should be a relaxed position from which we can transition into and transition out of to varying degrees. Be this, moving in, cartwheeling to a handstand and stopping, coming out, learning to transfer to one arm, these kind of things. But if you're not in that focused, relaxed state of mind where you can feel your body and get inside, you're not going to have a lot of success. So with that, they're the main points I feel that are very important to handstands. If you got questions, please ask them. If you like my videos, please subscribe. And don't worry, the rest of the series is coming. I'll cover all of this in a lot more detail. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you.